Hey guys, Jay from EcoTech Marine here, and today is the big day where I've got Jake Adams and Jeff Senske. Jeff Senske is from Aquarium Design Group, so if you've ever seen beautiful freshwater setups in the US, you've probably seen his work. And I don't think Jake Adams needs any introduction in the saltwater aquarium space. But what we're gonna kick off today is this Mega Colab, which is my first Mega Colab, so I'm kind of popping a cherry here. What are we gonna do?
So I know you've been setting up the studio to kind of prove, test, and educate your users on the various EcoTech marine products. And I generally come out here once a year. And I was hanging out with Jeff a few months ago, and I just thought, how cool would it be if we pooled, this experience together to just, showcase the EcoTech marine line of products, both for freshwater and saltwater, and just kind of bring some new tricks into the setup process while we're at it.
And we talked a little bit about your coral arriving already, but Jeff, what have you got planned for us here today?
Yeah, so I'm gonna do a style of layout that I came up with a few years ago, and I started calling it greening. That's kind of my own term. Secretly hoped it would catch on in the hobby. It's
greening.
Hasn't quite happened yet.
Greening.
So greening is where we don't have a soil substrate, and it's mostly just greening a hardscape. So we're using exclusively epiphytes, but it is a really cool style with a lot of kind of immediate impact, and I would say a little lower maintenance. And I think it'll take advantage of these cool systems we got here really well.
As you've seen in some of the recent videos on Reef Builders channel and Aquarium Design Group, I play with freshwater tanks as well, and Jeff has a lot of experience with saltwater aquariums also. So this is not so much like we want to show you a freshwater tank and a saltwater tank, but really draw a lot of the commonalities and just, hey, there's a lot we can learn from each other. And so I think the approach that he's taking with a lot of epiphytic plants is going to be really analogous to how we do a reef aquarium. So we're not planting in soil, but everything goes on to something hard, and you use things like super glue.
Yes, excellent analogy, actually, Jake. That's a really cool way to look at it.
And I'm just excited because we're gonna reap the benefits of having this ridiculous tank setting up horsepower all in one location. We were kind of joking about it before. I think we're saying, combined, what do you guys think? 2,000 tanks you've set up possibly over the course of the
tank builders, but he's done a lot more. We want to show people how approachable both hobbies are, and just really kind of highlight how much there is in common between the freshwater and saltwater. So do you want to show them the gear that we're going to be working with?
Yeah, absolutely. Equipment wise, what we've got set up here is some equipment for the saltwater tank and some equipment for the freshwater tank. So Jake has picked the Pro Line Opus 2 right here. And for him, what we have is a Vectra S2. That's going to be the return pump. We have two XR15 Pro Radions with mounts, and then we also have some Vortex circulation. Once he's got everything set up, he may also use these Versa dosing pumps to do calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, or trace elements. Over here on this side, we have the freshwater equipment. So we're going to do something a little bit different with the lighting on this tank. We're going to use one XR30 freshwater and a 2-arm mount that spans the tank. So that should look pretty cool and also be a good contrast to the 2 XR15 setup that we have over here on Jake's tank. Because this is a reef-ready tank, it also has a sump. So again, we're going to use that S2. And on a freshwater tank, you might want to dose fertilizer or other additives to that freshwater tank. So again, we have some Versas in case Jeff wants to set those up. Finally, we have some accessories down here, which we're going to get into in a future video. But right now, let's go back to Jake and Jeff and get their first impressions on the Opus 2 tanks.
So my first impressions of this tank, actually very, very cool. Some of you may know I'm a little bit of a stickler about a lot of aquarium products, but this is nice. And first impression, very, very high. The idea of a system that can be a reef aquarium and also function as a freshwater planted aquarium is something I think there's a lot of growing demand for. I certainly get a lot of those inquiries at the Aquarium Design Store. And so I'm looking forward to doing it. It's a little bit unconventional in terms of the core sort of freshwater aquascaping formula to use a sump, but I think modern sump design, I think the way that we can control the water level, the continuous siphon, all of that, is going to really make it much more doable than in the old days when we shied away from sumps because of the bioballs and other kinds of medias in there. We had problems with overflows and losing a lot of CO2. So really cool way we're going to plumb in the CO2 here. And I'm just really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great.
So I haven't seen the Nyos Opus tank in 3 years since I was in Germany. So it's really nice to get my eyes on it one more time. And as Jess pointed out, I really appreciate the extra height. It gives you a really nice showy aquarium. So this is the Proline stand. It's got some character to it with some of those broader shoulders. But this is the white version also. You see it comes with the sump. It's got a continuous siphon overflow. I like that it has a creative plumbing layout, so it's not all in your face. It's kind of in a line, and it just helps to give it a little bit more of a minimal look. We've been prepping for this video for a long while today, so I think we're all pretty eager to start setting up some gear.
Without any ados being furthered, let's get on and start aquascaping.
All right, put it in there. Mega Colab!
All right, here we are. It's sundown on day one, although the fun is far from over in our Mega Colab. And a lot's actually happened today. We've been busy all day working on this stuff. Well, more so you guys than me, but I did set up some equipment. What's happening over here, Jake?
So, I got all the gear in place. We got 2 MP10s, a Vectra S2 for the return, and I'm for sure like one Radeon XR30 would be enough for this tank, but just in order to get a little bit better, spread of the light, I decided to go with 2 XR15, also to contrast what we're doing on the other tank. We got the Nyos Quantum 120 protein skimmer going, and a lot of wiring and cable management just to keep things nice and neat. I finally got my Cable Boss stapler, which is going to help me make all the wires disappear. But like you said, the heavy lifting is done. And just about to go grab a handful of live rock and corals and make sure to head on over to the Reef Builders channel to see the build out of this entire aquarium. And I can't wait to get started.
All right, Jeff, so over here, your tank's actually all set up and ready to go with the equipment. We got the freshwater radiant on there. We've got it plumbed. There's an inline, I think, CO2 diffuser, which was really cool to see set up. And now we're kind of ready for the next step, and maybe tell us a little bit about what you're going to do and also what actually you spent most of the time where Jake was messing around with the water doing.
Right. So yeah, it's a little different process with a freshwater aquascape. and that we generally do it dry. And so, it's a common thing I even hear, all the time actually, that people are filling it with water or halfway with water, then trying to add the elements, the hardscape, the planting, etc. And so you'll find it's just a much more sort of clean approach to not put any water in the tank. So we'll set our hardscape, just kind of wet everything down, and then start to add the plants.
That's really cool. And so over here we have the plants, which you've been carefully getting prepped, ready for once you have the hardscape in place, correct?
Right. So the way the plants come from nurseries and suppliers generally do require a fair amount of prep up front. That might be just, removing them from the pot. They'll often have this, the rock wool attached. And so we've got some processes just for getting that all cleaned up. And then same with a lot of the bucephalandras, which are a type of epiphyte or plant that's going to grow attached to the hardscape. They too kind of require their own specific prep to have them in the best possible condition for, attaching to the wood and stone. So yeah, that is a added layer of little bit tedious, but well worth the effort. That does make this different from a reef aquarium.
And I think I'm really excited to see this greening approach, where you're going to build this really cool looking hardscape.
Right.
And then the plants are basically going to intermingle with the hardscape, not be planted per se.
Exactly. Which is why I like to call it kind of greening, just trying to sort of establish it as its own particular unique approach, because these plants really don't want to be rooted in a substrate or a traditional soil substrate. So not only do we get to exclude a soil substrate and the variables it can introduce into the water column, etc., but we get a planting style or a greening style that provides a lot more, I would call it like an immediate impact. It just kind of can look like something
like right from
much earlier on, right? You could loosely look at it maybe similarly to the effect of an LPS versus an SPS coral. If I get a nice big bubble or an elegance coral, something like that, in a few days it might start to open up, right? Whereas if I've had to attach a frag, for example, of SPS coral on a traditional plug, something like that, it's going to need some time to grow in and develop. So frags could almost be a little bit like the stemmed plants in an aquascape, and these plants may function a little bit more. These are loose analogies, but kind of give you a little reference point for the way that it can look like a little more of an established scene a lot sooner.
Very cool. Well, I can't wait to see what happens, and I'm going to let you guys get back to work, and I'm sure we're all excited to see how this turns out.